Okay, so I'm going to show you how to set the pressure with one, which is the same for all of them. So what you want to do is you get your block that you're going to print. And I also have these jigs here, so I'm going to make 3 jigs to properly put your paper with the right margin, right? So it's going to square the paper to your image. So these are all set to the same size block that you guys have, and I'll show you how to use this. But first we want to set the pressure before we ink up, before we get any ink out, before we start inking this up. This shouldn't have ink on it to set the pressure. You want to just have it clean. And these knobs right here, if the roller is all the way down, then you want to lift them all the way up, counterclockwise, makes them go all the way to the top. This roller right here will go up. So I'm trying to get this roller above the block so it can pass through, okay? Once it's this high, once it's high enough to go through like this, then I'll start to slowly creep the pressure down. And you don't want to just force it down, you don't want to be really tight when you crank it, so I'm going to slowly go down. Now what I like to do is not just to make these numbers right here the same, because right here we have these dials that you think that they would be matching and this would be level. I don't like to use these. If these aren't calibrated correctly, it's really based on the floor, right? The etching press might be off because the floor is unbalanced or this tabletop is unbalanced. So I use a level, okay? So what you want to do is, you can come closer over here, you'll notice that this bubble is not perfectly centered. So this bed is off, right? So which means if I had this roller level, if this was level, that would mean that this roller is actually more pressure on this side, right? This is off, this is level, there's more pressure on one side, okay? So what I want to do is I want to match this roller to the bed. If this is off, I want this to be off. That way it's parallel, right? So it's even pressure. So if you notice, the bubble is on this side of the line, right? It's not level. This is not level. I want this to look like this. So it still needs more pressure down here. This needs to go down. Actually, this needs to go down. And you'll see that the bubble is actually coming closer to this side, which mimics the bed. Okay? Now, these are the same, right? Now, when I start to creep the pressure little by little, if I do a half turn here, this has to be a half turn. You know, these aren't the same, so that's so you know how to get it ready to go, okay? So now, to check the pressure, I get a piece of newsprint. Start with your newsprint. Put it on top of your image. And I also use the back of your newsprint. There's this chipboard, right? You can rip this off, and I want you to use this whenever you print. So the back of the paper pad or the newsprint pad has this chipboard. So you want to use this when you print. Okay? So just remove it entirely. Your paper's already off. Okay? Of course, make sure you take care of your paper. So we're going to use this and put it on top of the newsprint, okay? So, of course, you're going to use the crank. It's going to catch. If it feels like it's too much pressure, you know, don't force it. Make sure you come and raise it up because you're adding more levels. You know, like you're getting higher and higher, making it more packed. So I'm going to go up one and feel it out. There's no pressure whatsoever. I don't feel anything. At first it felt like it was too much pressure. I went one rotation to get it higher. I'm going to go half rotation. I'm just going to go half, half. Now whenever you're using these presses, if there's a lot of pressure, especially this one right here, you know, it has a lot of pressure when it's on top of your block. Once it goes over, it's going to fall off, which means that this bed is going to want to shoot out the other. If there's a ton of pressure and you're really having to crank it, once it goes off the other edge, it's going to want to shoot it. So whenever you're next to these presses, never stand, you know, in the way of the bed. These big etching presses have bigger beds. They're going to come out further. So that's just a warning. Of course, you know, women, don't have jewelry or anything hanging, or your hair, you know, because you don't want to get caught in the roller. So the next thing I want to look at, once I run it through, is I want to look and see if the newsprint is being embossed by the image, by the block. Like right here, I can see it's slightly embossed, but it's still not enough pressure. So I just want to I want to slowly creep up on it, right? I don't want to just hammer down and add a ton of pressure. So now I'll do the full, I'll just do quarter rotation. I'm going to run it the other way. Feel a little bit more pressure now. You can see it pop off when it goes off the edge, but that's fine. If it's a little bit, that's okay. So now when you come look at the newsprint, I could see the image, right? I could see it slightly embossed, very so slightly. That means it's going to pick up the image just fine. Especially whenever, you know, this newsprint is thin. Once you use your good paper, it's actually a little bit thicker, so it's actually going to pick up even more. It's going to add a little bit more pressure when you use the good paper. But that's what I want to see when you set the pressure. Slightly embossed, okay? So now this is set to this thickness that everyone has, so no one should be able to mess with this. You might be able to adjust it a little bit depending on your paper. People might have different types of paper. You can adjust it slightly, as long as everyone has the same setup, right? And the reason why we use this and not the blanket is because the blankets push down. That's a different process entirely. They'll push the paper into the grooves. You just want to get the surface. This is a hard backing. This just pushes down on the surface. Okay? So now I'm going to show you how to ink up, and how to ink up the block properly, how to get it all set up, and ink up without getting too messy, okay? That's the next step. This is setting the pressure. That's complete.